Welcome back. Week 3 of College 101 begins part of a section in the class on the importance of diversity in a number of ways in higher education. And so we're going to talk about it partly as it relates to academic freedom and to college campuses and to the college classroom. And in doing so, I want to make sure, though, that we kind of check a couple things at the door. First off, I recognize full well that for some folks, having this conversation come to you from an upper middle class white guy isn't necessarily going to sound, it's not going to come off great, right? So let's address this here. Yeah. I grew up an upper middle class white guy in a largely white suburb, of which I was the benefit not only of white privilege, but the beneficiary of white privilege, but any number of other forms of privilege. The thing to recognize for me about that has always been, one, that I was the benefit of all of that, beneficiary of all of that, and two, for me to know that even now, as I work and strive daily to be as anti-racist and as inclusive as I can, that it's a process. It's not like Twitter where you get an official check and you're good. It's something that you need to recognize and understand and learn from and move with every single day, that there are new opportunities to kind of understand the nature of bias and where it exists and how to move forward. That being said, when it comes to talking about diversity of thought on a college campus, it really depends on what time you're talking about. Largely in the first half of the 20th century, those who attended colleges tended to be individuals who looked like me. They tended to be from the upper middle class. They tended to have certain views and values and biases, be it gender or racial or religious-based or otherwise, or in terms of sexual orientation or sexuality, etc. There's many other forms of biases that these individuals had. And that tended to dictate the kinds of conversations that happened both in a campus community and in the classroom. Since the 1950s, since the era of the Cold War, since the GI Bill and the opening up of higher education for many across the country, much of that has changed. In the 1950s, 60s, and 70s, a robust conversation on the meaning of what's called academic freedom entered into the experience of many in higher education, be it on the campuses of a community college or a four-year institution. Generally, for someone like me who is a professor, academic freedom means that I can show you a resource or have a conversation or discussion that, as long as I do not disrespect who you are as an individual, that I can show you that resource, that we can, as a classroom, have a conversation about that and see what that resource is, what it isn't, and what it should be. Meaning, is it acceptable for me, for example, to use certain words? Maybe not, no. But is it acceptable for me to show you in the history classroom a resource from the late 1700s, early 1800s, a primary document that uses things that we would consider to be unacceptable today? Yes, it's okay. But having the conversation freely and openly about that document or that resource, that's where the academic freedom comes in. The question of, does the professor have choice over what is done in the classroom? Okay. Now, what is done in the classroom also relates to questions of campus. Whether or not your campus can and should be a place for academic freedom. Now, these two separate elements are where the 21st century debates over academic freedom come in largely. So again, can your campus should it be a place of open and free expression? Should there be ideas, events, programs that not everyone disagrees with, but it provides an opportunity or place for discussion? This is a debatable thing. In the last few years, there have been questions over the term safe spaces, that certain topics or terms or other things wouldn't be allowed to be discussed in a classroom. Is that okay? Is that not okay? Can you be challenged as an individual? Can your thoughts or ideas be challenged when it comes to this kind of thing? That would be where it relates in the classroom. Let me give you an example. If the last few years, we of course have had many debates over the national anthem, partly due to the protests against police violence and systemic racism from Colin Kaepernick, where he would typically take a knee during the national anthem. If I was in a physical classroom and I was to kneel down and play the national anthem, and I was to stay on a knee while it was being played, some folks would be fine with that. Others would be very upset by that. The question would be, is it okay for me to perform that action? Right? I'm not saying that I have or that I would, but the question is, what do you think of a professor who would do that? Do you think it's okay? Do you think it's not okay? Right? That's that question of in the classroom academic freedom. What is the purpose of a classroom? Is it to expose you to new ideas? Is it to reinforce your own that you already hold? This is one of those aspects of understanding diversity in higher education. It's from the perspective of diversity in thought and free academic freedom, but it's one of those different perspectives. Thank you so much.